had to refilm this video because when I first filmed it, I was covered in hives and the entire video I just looked like an itchy mess. Hey guys, I'm Madison Mary and welcome back to my channel. So today I have my January wrap up. I read 8 books in the month of January. 5 of those books I read during the first week of January, and then the rest I read throughout the rest of the month because it was a really hectic month for me, going back to university and kind of getting back to the swing of things. I still actually managed to get 2 books read and 1 audiobook read. So that is only 3 books in 3 weeks, so that is 1 book a week, but that's not bad. You know, there's worse things, you know, like 0 books. Without further ado, let's get to what I read. So the first book that I read was At Any Price, and this is by Brenna Aubrey. This is the first in Brenna Aubrey's Gaming the System series. So the premise of this book is that we follow Mia, who is a med student slash gaming blogger, and she auctions off her virginity in order to help pay for medical school and her mother's cancer treatment. And then we have Adam Drake, who is a multi-millionaire CEO of a major gaming company that Mia actually blogs for. And when Adam Drake wins this, things don't actually go as planned. Even though Mia has this whole contract written up and all these specific rules, Adam seems fixated on drawing out the contract for as long as he can. This was a really fun read. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It just wasn't a book that I was just completely enamored with. One thing that I really did appreciate about this book was how it handled the whole topic of sex for money, because it is a bit of a... it can be a touchy topic, and I think the way that it was handled was really well. I did overall enjoy this. I loved seeing Mia and Adam's relationship as it progressed. Mia was such a relatable character, and it was interesting seeing her kind of learn to open up. She is just such a very real and straightforward character, and I really enjoyed that from her. And then when it comes to Adam Drake, he was just that very typical kind of millionaire guy who was just really fun and sexy to read about, so I definitely really enjoyed this book. The next book I read was, of course, none other than The Deal by Elle Kennedy. So I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is the first book in Elle Kennedy's Off-Campus series. So The Deal follows Hannah and Garrett. Garrett is one of the star hockey players at Briar University. Hannah is currently acing her philosophy class, and Garrett is not doing so well, and if his GPA drops in this class, he will be benched for the rest of the season. So when Garrett sees that Hannah is actually doing pretty well in the class, he tries to enlist her help to be his tutor. When Garrett finds out that Hannah has a crush on a guy in the football team, he convinces her to make a trade. He will help her catch the attention of the guy that she likes, and in return she will tutor him. The fake boyfriend trope in this is bomb, and I absolutely just adore the way that it is done in this. It is my favorite fake boyfriend trope that I have read so far. It progresses at a very smooth rate, and I absolutely just adore Hannah's defiance, and it was just such an interesting thing to see their relationship grow and their friendship, because one of the best things was you really did see them develop a friendship, and it was just such a cute friendship that they had. They would literally spend nights just cuddled up on his bed watching Breaking Bad. Like, how adorable is that? Like, oh my god, it was like one of my favorite, like, they're just such a cute couple, and I just absolutely adored this book. It was such a quick and fast read for me. One thing I did realize during this was a reread for me, one thing that I did realize with this reread was that there were some things that I realized were a bit problematic. There is a bit of nonchalance with stigmas, so there is a point where a character says, oh, like, they're so bipolar, and then a point where they're like, oh, I'd rather cut myself. It's definitely something that did irk me, and compared to the first time I read it, where I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, I did take off for those reasons. The next book I read was a really bad choice. It wasn't a bad book. Let me explain why. I read Hate to Love You by Jennifer Sucevic. This book was the exact same premise as The Deal. Exact same I'm not... And The Deal came out before this book too. So Hate to Love You, we follow Natalie and Brody. Natalie and Brody are both in this business class together, and they really do hate each other. They're constantly bickering. This is way more of a hate to love relationship in comparison to The Deal, hence the name Hate to Love You. But once again, it's the whole idea of, you know, fake dating and the girl tutoring the hockey player, because Brody is once again a hockey player, and then there's a conflict that arises with the hockey player's dad being very controlling over the boy's hockey future and becoming professional and like not being distracted by girls. Like, it is just so similar, and it was just so crazy, and in my opinion it was just a lesser version of The Deal, so I did give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I could have rated it lower, but I did want to take into account the fact that The only reason why I would be giving it like less would be because I'm comparing it to the deal. A little bit harsh, but it's the truth. The next book I read was the second book in the Off-Campus series, and that is The Mistake by Elle Kennedy. In my opinion, this one is the weakest of all 4 books. I still haven't read the 4th book yet, so it's a little bit biased, but I have the feeling that's going to be the weakest out of all of them. In this book we follow Logan and Grace. So Grace is a college freshman and Logan is of course on the hockey team. And I think the biggest issue I had with this one was the first half of The Mistake was just very fast paced, it was very messy. Their whole meet cute moment is Logan turning up accidentally at Grace's dorm room and then she invites him to come watch a movie with her. And then they're sitting there watching a movie and then they start like, you know, doing touchy-feely stuff and it's just like... And then she fakes an orgasm and then he leaves. So the first half of this book takes place during spring semester. Then you have 3 chapters that are kind of during summer and then you have them coming back for the fall semester. And it was when they came back for the fall semester that I thought the book really picked up, because you have Logan trying to make things up to Grace and that whole dynamic, seeing Grace kind of being this very strong-willed female who was kind of like, you know what, it's my sophomore year, I made mistakes during my freshman year, I let my best friend bully me into doing so many things, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm going to make my own name for myself, I'm going to like take charge of my life. So I thought that her character was actually very refreshing and it was really nice to see. So Logan's father is an alcoholic and Logan and his brother have to constantly cover up for his dad's alcoholism, and the way that that whole conflict was sorted out felt very rushed and very quick. Elle Kennedy seemed to just really tied up very nicely. I ended up giving The Mistake 3.5 out of 5 stars. I like Grace so much that I'm giving it a 3.5. That and the fact that all 4 of the hockey boys together is just something that I love. I love seeing all 4 of the boys together. It's just so adorable. They're so cute. So I then directly followed this up with the 3rd book, and that is The Score by Elle Kennedy, and oh my god, this book was flipping amazing. I can tell you right now, this book is the best one out of all 4 of them. Yes, like I said, haven't read the 4th book, but I already know there's no way that the 4th book can top the 3rd book, because Dean and Allie are the best people ever. Them together, it is steamy, they are both headstrong people, they also have a lot more depth to them. Oh, this one was just phenomenal. So Allie is Hannah's best friend. So Hannah's who we follow in the 1st book, so now we follow her best friend, and Allie has just recently gotten out of a long-term relationship that we have seen over the last 2 books. She's had an on and off boyfriend that's kind of a bit of an unhealthy relationship, so she finally ends it. And so this book starts off with the first 2 chapters with Allie kind of going to spend the weekend at the hockey house so that she can get away from her boyfriend, who kind of keeps stalking her at her dorm room, like knocking on, like he's a little bit excessive. So she spends the weekend there, and lo and behold, her and Dean get way too plastered one night and end up having sex. So that happens and she's just like, okay, that's not who I am, like I don't just have one night stands. And she's kind of a serial monogamist, so she kind of really just wants to put that all behind her and kind of keep going with her life. But Dean's kind of all like, I kind of like this girl, she's very feisty, she's not like everyone else. Dean in the first 2 books comes off as very one-dimensional. He's kind of labeled as the big man whore of the group. That his chapter starts out with him about to have a threesome in that hockey house. So I absolutely adored seeing all the layers to Dean. You really get to understand who he is and all these, there's just so much more to him that you just didn't realize beforehand, and he just ends up being like actually really soft, and I just absolutely adored him for that. And I really loved seeing Allie, because she kind of throughout this book realized, I'm being a serial monogamist, like I keep being in these relationships, I kind of need time to be by myself and figure out who I am without having a man with me. The only complaint that I did have about this one was that the conflict was not of my taste. There is a certain event that happens and it then kind of sends Dean down this whole internal spiral. I just didn't really like it, and I don't know if it's just because I was just mad that he kind of spiraled as a character, or if it was just the writing style. So if you've read the book, let me know what you kind of thought of that whole Dean situation. And one thing that I have realized with all 3 of the books is that the conflict resolution, Elle Kennedy just tends to really wrap up her endings quite quickly compared to the rest of the novel. And I think that's just really a theme with her. I haven't read any of her new books, so I don't know if she kind of improves upon that as she's written more and more novels. But at least for the Off-Campus series, her endings tend to be very fast-paced and a little bit rushed, in my opinion. The one thing I will say is that the whole Off-Campus series, I adore all of the epilogues, because you get to see each of the characters a few years later and Oh my god, it's just so adorable and I love it. Oh, if I didn't say, I rated that one a 4.75 stars. The next book I read was City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. This was a buddy read with Soleil at the Little Readers Corner. So this is the second book in the Model Instrument series. So this series follows Clary Frey, who thinks she's just a regular mundane human until one day her mother is kidnapped and Clary finds out that there's actually a whole secret underworld that she was never aware of. It turns out that she is actually a shadow hunter, and that means that she has angel blood inside of her, and it also means that she is practically a demon slayer. I actually gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I actually enjoyed this one a lot more than City of Bones. I think that's because we see a lot more of Simon in this book, especially with what happens to Simon in this book. I absolutely just adore that, and he's just one of my most favorite characters, and I just love his whole storyline in this. It's just something that I really adore. Clary and Jace's storyline in this, not my fave, but I already know how things go because I've read up to City of Glass before, so I feel like that kind of allowed me to read this with a little bit more of an open eye, and I cannot wait to pick up City of Glass in the month of March. So the last physical book that I read this month was Trial by Fire by Josephine Angelini. I read this as part of a read-along hosted by Novel Serendipity, and I was actually a co-host for this read-along, and I absolutely just adored being a part of that and just kind of getting to know Sarah's favourite book. I did give this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I just felt like this story had a lot of plot holes. It did a lot more of telling than showing. Trial by Fire is part of a trilogy in which we follow Lily Proctor, who has deathly allergies in her world. One day, after a very humiliating incident at a high school party, she wishes that she could just disappear. In return, she finds herself suddenly transported to an alternate reality. In this world, the Salem witches were never eradicated. As a result, they are now the highest power of being. There's even an alternate version of herself, and her alternate version is Lillian, and Lillian is actually the Salem witch. She's the most powerful witch in this land. However, Lillian over the past 12 months has kind of flipped her switch and kind of gone a little bit hanging every Tom, Dick and Harry. Lily has been brought to this world and she doesn't really know why Lillian has brought her here, and it's kind of her trying to navigate being in this new world. My favorite thing about this book was actually the magic system. I absolutely just adored it. It's a very alchemical magic system, and in a sense it reminded me of Full Metal Alchemist, if you have watched that. So in the beginning she fractures her ankle, and as a result she has to ingest, I think, sulfur and all these other kind of elements like in a drink, and when she drinks this she can then transform those elements into ligaments and bone and blood to actually help heal her wound, and it's actually really cool. There's even a point in time in this book where with her magical abilities she can actually purify water, so she can actually produce clean drinking water for the Outlanders, which I thought was really awesome. The whole magic system in this has so much potential, and I'm really intrigued to see more of it. And then the last book I have to talk to you guys about is All These Beautiful Strangers by Elizabeth Klehfoth. I listened to this on audiobook. This book did take me a while to listen to because I did start it back in December when I was in Australia, and then I managed to actually finish it when I came back to school this semester, and I actually bumped up the speed to 1.75 times, and ever since I bumped up the speed, that's just what I've been listening to, and it's actually crazy how much quicker you get through audiobooks when you bump up the speed to that. Like, it's nuts, guys. We follow Charlie Calloway, who is the heir to the Calloway group, and 10 years ago when Charlie was 7 years old, her mother suddenly went missing one night and no one ever heard from her again. There are a lot of conspiracies about what could have happened to Charlie's mother, whether or not her father was involved. Fast forward 10 years, Charlie is a junior at Knollwood Prep, which is a prestigious boarding school. At this school there is an elite group called the A's, and they are kind of Knollwood's it crowd. They are a secret group of students in which each year new initiates are brought into the group and they have to play the game. They have all these different tasks they have to complete, or else they'll face pretty much total ruin. What I thought was really cool about this book was you're following Charlie as she's kind of navigating being part of the A's and being an initiate for the A's and kind of going through that whole process. But at the same time, some things from the past start to come up and Charlie starts to want to look back into her mother's disappearance. I absolutely just fell head over heels for the mystery aspect of it. I was so intrigued to find out what really happened to her mother and how everything really ties together. Elizabeth Klehfoth did such an amazing job with this book. Oh my god, the way that everything wrapped up, there were all these little things that happen, and the way that everything and everyone is connected is just so phenomenally done. I give serious kudos to her. Like, wow. I did give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I probably could have given it a 4.5, but you know. I'm really thinking about changing my rating system, by the way. I'm thinking about if I want to get rid of half stars. I just felt that all the characters were so in depth and you really got to know everyone. In my opinion, one of the biggest themes of this novel is morality, and especially grey morality, and you know, knowing when to tell the truth and when it can hurt more than it can heal. And I just loved how Charlie was kind of investigating morality and kind of figuring out where she kind of felt like she fit, learning about who she wants to be as a person, and just kind of exploring her own moral consciousness. I just thought that was such a really nice aspect of the novel. I want to say that we do follow 2 different timelines. So we follow Charlie in present day, and then we also follow her mother Grace and her father Alistair back time. But it was actually really fun to see all 3 the point of views, especially seeing how Grace and Alistair's timelines match up, so seeing how her parents met and seeing how their relationship progressed, and you really get to see what happened to Grace. I was actually pretty surprised by what happened. There were actually a few different mysteries that were going on that were linked to Grace's ultimate disappearance. Like I said, everything is just so intertwined, and that was just something that stood out to me in such a phenomenal way. In my opinion, this is one of the strongest ones that I have listened to so far. The one disclaimer I will say is that the voice narrator for Grace is very monotone. Yeah, those are the 8 books that I read during the month of January. If you guys have read any of these books and had similar thoughts or different thoughts, let me know in the comments. I'd be really interested to see what you guys think. If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button down below. If you want to see more of me, please subscribe to my channel. And until next time, thanks a bunch guys. Bye!